غريب. طيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. What did he say today's date was? 15th of the Hijri. Jumada al-Thaani. طيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. As we resume these classes, which is called refresher or is suitable for the new Shahadah classes, in addition to those who want to return themselves back on track from certain situations that might have happened or transpired. And we wanted to gear these classes towards catering technically for everyone. It's not just a class that's suitable for someone that recently embraced Islam. Can you adjust that a little bit, the sound? That just recently embraced Islam, rather you'll find it suitable for all levels. So as we resume this class, with the time now 7:07 p.m. on this night of, technically it's later to Sept, probably put it up a little bit more. What the date is tonight, the Jumada al-Thaani, we said it's what, the 15th, right? The 14th? After Maghrib, right? So the 15th of Jumada al-Thani, what they call the Jumada al-Akhirah, in the year 1447, after the Hijrah, 1447, after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ, which agrees with the Gregorian calendar with 7:08 p.m., Friday, December the 5th, 2025. So keep in mind of the Hijri date, like we mentioned, it's said currently this is the 15th of Jumada al-Thani, or you could call Jumada al-Akhirah, the year 1447, after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ. So we were discussing the matters of the arkan, or the PDF we've been covering, everyone, is entitled Shurut al-Salawat, wa arkanuha wa wajibatuha, the conditions of the prayer, its pillars, and its obligations. Keep in mind, we will return back, like we said, to the affairs of Aqidah. We were discussing the conditions of it, of the kalima, al-Shahadah, the statement of one when they testified to La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the conditions of La ilaha illallah, which are very important. Because those matters, if one does not have basic knowledge of those type of affairs, then you'll find that their Islam is subjected to be nullified, especially affairs of doubt and affairs of acceptance and all those other matters that we were covering from the previous classes. So we want to finalize these other matters, like we stopped last class, for example, on the condition of the prayer. We discussed that, and we'll resume those conditions also. But where we previously stopped, if you will, everyone looks at the PDF, if you look at it, and I have it in the Telegram, I put the actual link in it, if everyone's in Telegram. And if one will try to put it on YouTube, for those who are listening in that way, probably next class. But I put the actual link for those who's in Telegram. If they log off, they'll see the link at the bottom, the actual PDF we're using. You'll find it. So it's there. So if you look, we were mentioning, or we were in the topic of what they call nawaqid al-wudu, what will nullify one's wudu. So all the matters that we've been covering was the salat, of course. Then if you return to the PDF, we were discussing in detail the fourth condition of the prayer. If you look in the PDF, we were discussing the fourth condition of the prayer. The fourth condition is what, everyone? Removing minor and major impurity. removing major and minor impurity. So those matters kind of branched off a little bit. The great Imam, if you look in the book, he branched off slightly to cover those affairs because they're also important in regards to performing the prayer properly. So if you want to read the conditions quickly, everyone, let's go back to the prayer, for example, just to catch up, because some people are probably confused. If you go back to the book, the beginning of the book, to the opening chapter where it says conditions of the prayer are 9. You see it? Conditions of the prayer are 9. That's the first page. It should be the first page. What does it say? Islam, intellect, distinction, removal of major and minor impurity, removing impurities, covering the awrah, time entering or the entering of the time for the prayer, facing the qibla, and intention. And intention. Those are the conditions of the prayer. Right, everyone? But we said that the prayer consists of conditions, pillars, and obligations. Don't worry, those other matters will cover. What we were discussing in last class, notice it says conditions of the prayer are 9. We covered Islam. If you look at it, we covered sanity. The third and the fourth is what we were covering, which is removal of the state of major and minor impurity and removal of impurities. Or in removal of impurities. That's what we were discussing in detail. If you want to put a circle around where it says removal of major and minor impurity, if you want to say, in other words, what they call wudu, or purification for prayer. Purification for prayer, which is the third and fourth condition. Woman, do it. You're good. So you'll find, excellent. So YouTube. So this is not this mixer. I'm using mixer. You put it YouTube, or you put it in there. Okay, good, good. So brother, right now he's working on putting the actual link in the YouTube for those who are listening through YouTube. So keep in mind as we were discussing again. So if you look in your PDF, what does it say? Islam, intellect, or if you want to say sanity, distinction. That's the third. Then the fourth and the fifth says removal of major and minor impurity and removal of impurities. So that's where we branched off, because that in itself is topic. That in itself is a topic, and that's what we were discussing in last class. And if you want to say removal of major and minor impurity, in other words, you could say wudu, or what they call purification. Purification. So when you look in your books, it says removal of major and minor impurity. That's called wudu. That's called purification. And as we discussed, one has to perform purification. They call it, in other words, ablution. Ablution. But like we mentioned, it's purification for the prayer of how to perform it properly. Because you'll find that a lot of the Muslims, even some of them have been Muslim for years, and you'll find that they still do not know how to perform wudu properly. They don't know how to perform it properly. And that's what we were covering last class. So if you flip the page, so now keep in mind those are the conditions we were discussing. So now if you look in your book, fourth condition, if you look in your book, it says fourth condition, removal of hadith, major and minor impurity. And he explains what it is. What does he say? Wahu al-wudu. And it is purification. Al-ma'ruf wa mujibuhu al-hadath. He said wudu, which is known, and the reason for it is hadath, meaning the state of major or minor impurity that one allows to happen for himself by what? By either breaking wind and all those other matters we discussed. or defecation, or defecation, or one urinating, or any of those other matters as we discussed. And we'll discuss that in detail again, don't worry. So then he mentions that purification in itself has how many conditions? 10. So if you look in the book, that's what we covered. So all these we discuss. So let's move quickly. It says shurutuhu ashra. 10, its conditions are 10. shurutuhu ashra. الإسلام والعقل والتمييز والنية واستصحاب حكمها بأن لا ينوي قطعها حتى تم الطهارة. We already discussed this. Just reading it quickly so everyone can catch up, so they can know where we are. So all these matters again we covered. So the conditions of is 10 based upon what the great Imam mentioned here. Number 1 is Islam, sanity, distinction, and intention. And carrying out that intention from the beginning of when you start wudu to the end, when you finalize it or when you finish it. Then he says that a person does not cut his intention until purification is complete. So keep in mind, in addition to what's written in front of us, we also covered other details. So go back to the recordings because they're very important for one to know. Then he continues to say, وَانْقِطَاعُ مُوجِبْ, until one has completed their tahara and removing the reason. What does that mean? We already talked about that last class. We said, inqita' mujib, removing the reason or cutting or stopping the reason. What does that mean? Meaning when you go to the bathroom, any type of urine or feces or what have you has to what? Stop completely. That's what we talked about last class. We already mentioned this. We gave clarity of what he intended by the statement here. We said when one goes to the bathroom, what technically removes you out of the state of wudu and puts you in a state of minor impurity is urination or defecation, for example. Once that stops, you have to make sure that it stops what? Completely. Meaning the urine stops, and defecation or wind, meaning passing wind, that stops completely. Then one purifies themselves. Then he looked in the book. What does it say? Either by istinja or istijmarun, istinja'u or istijmarun qablahu. We already talked about that. So what will one do when they go to the bathroom? They make sure that they have completely stopped or removed urination, defecation, passing wind, because all those matters are called mujib, meaning the reason of why you have to make wudu. Because urination is a reason to make wudu, defecation likewise is a reason to make what? Wudu, and passing wind likewise is a reason to make what? Wudu. All those affairs has to stop completely when you're in the bathroom. Because you cannot renew your wudu without it coming to a complete stop from urine or feces or wind. So that's what he's mentioning here in the PDF. So it says inqita' mujib, meaning the reason of what will render you in that state of minor impurity has to come to a complete halt. He continues to say, then after completely stops, then you use the method what they call again istinja or istijmarun qablahu, using istinja, purification of what we call istinja, which is, what is it, everyone? Water. Using water. And inshallah, I'll also bring the method of how a woman purifies themselves, because women have to be a little bit more tedious in regards to purifying themselves. Yes, absolutely. I think certain sisters don't know how to accurately or precisely purify themselves after they urinate or defecate. That's something that we'll also speak about, that I think that sisters should know, because women's their private parts are more sensitive and more what, tedious. Like they can't use with so much water, or else it will cause some form of an odor. It will cause some form of an odor. So women's private parts are a little bit more what, sensitive and more tedious than men. They're a little bit more sensitive. So there's a certain way that women have to do it in order for them not to harm themselves or cause some type of irritation or a certain odor. Right, exactly. I'm sure that some of our sisters are familiar with this, where it can render them in what they call it in the proper pH balance, and throw it off. It can cause an odor. It can cause some irritation. All those different matters deserves attention. So, but generally, the men, as we discussed, the men is simple. They take the tip of their private part and they put what, water on it. That's it. Once, twice, three times at the tip. So I don't know where brothers take the whole container and pour it all on their private. I don't know why they do that or where they get that from. I have no idea. You don't have to do that. Men is simple. Brothers, you take the tip of your private part and then what? Pour water on it. Three times. That's it. You're finished. When you pour water all in your private part, now you're making yourself succumb to what? Odor and other things. So those are things to keep in mind, as we talked about. So it says in the book, istinja o istijmarun qablahu. So when I have some time, like I said, I know there's a lot of sisters that I know that are very good in hygiene. And I actually asked sisters in my family, how does a woman properly make istinja? They wrote it down, and we have some time, we'll talk about it. How a woman can properly make istinja without using too much water, where it might cause some form of irritation or odor or ruining her pH balance and the likes. So we'll talk about that inshallah. Right. So you have istinja, then you have istijmarun qablahu. Then istijmar, in its origin, is the usage of what? Rocks. Rocks, like we said, during the time of old, or that they didn't have easily accessible, rather at all, tissue. So they were forced to use another method. But in these days and times, as we know, tissue takes that place. So let's keep going. وَطَهُودِيَةُ مَاء. We already talked about that. طَهُودِيَةُ مَاء. And the purification of water, meaning what type of water to use. That removes hadath, that removes impurity, or the state of impurity. Let's skip everyone, because we want to cover today's class. Then he mentioned the furud. Furuduhu fasittatun. Then he teaches exactly the steps of wudu, as we talked about last class. Excuse me. The steps of what to do first. Notice he started with ghasul wajh, washing the face. Washing the face. So notice we mentioned that when one performs wudu, when they're performing purification, it's not an obligation to wash their hands first, as we mentioned last class, as in the previous classes. Notice in the ayah we talked about last class, one can start directly with what? Washing their face. And washing their hands in the beginning of wudu is highly recommended. It's not an obligation, but it's highly recommended. But what is obligatory is washing what? The face. There's no way you can wash your face unless you wash your what? Your hands. So it's kind of included already. But at any rate, ghasul wajh, washing the face. And from washing the face is al-madmadah wal-istinshaq. Al-madmadah wal-istinshaq, which is gargling and putting the water up the nose and then blowing it out to the end of what we mentioned. So let's keep going. Next step, because we want to talk about the class for today. Then after he finished the furud, the obligatory matters in what's to be washed in the method of wudu, meaning the parts of the body from the face. Then we talked about what? The hands, or the fingers rather, to the elbow. We talked about all that. And then the head, and then the feet. Oh, we could go in this order. The face, then after the face, what? Of course, what's in face of the mouth and the nose, of course. Then after that, then what, everyone? The arms, meaning starting from where? The fingertips to the where? To the elbow. From the right and the left. And we talked about how many times one can do it. Then after that, again, what comes after that? The head, how many? Once. We talked about that. And last, well, the ears are part of the what? The head. We said the ears are part of al-udhun min al-rats. As we know, the ear is from the head. Al-udhun min al-rats. Al-udhunu min al-rats. The ears are from the head. They're all the same. طيب, after that, last, أخيرا, تغسل ماذا؟ القدمين. أحسنت. أخيرا تغسل القدمين. Then lastly, you would wash what, everyone? The feet. You wash them. You can wash them once, twice, and 3 times, which is the best, the most preferred, if one to do it. But if they did twice or once, it's enough. As long as they covered what needs to be washed to the ankle bone. To the ankle bone. Okay, everyone? The whole foot. We also talked about the socks. We talked about a lot of the affairs that's connected with the socks. How it's permissible for one, after they wash their feet or their bare feet and dry it, they wear what? Socks over it. Once you wear socks over it and you break your wudu, now you can wipe over it. How many? Once. Where? At the top of the sock, not the bottom. At the top. As Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu mentioned in the Athar, which is what, everyone? That لو كان الدين بالعقل لكان مسح باطن الخف أولى من مسح ايش؟ أعلاه. ولكن الدين بالوحي أو بالسنة أو التسليم بالسنة. You'll find out Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said it clearly. If the deen was with intellect instead of submission to revelation and following the sunnah, so-called, then it would have been more appropriate to wash or wipe where? The bottom. Then what? The top. But however, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down His religion for submission. That we're supposed to follow what Allah commanded, not what so-called goes with our reasoning or rationality or intellect. But the point of the matter is, in that particular other of Ali ibn Abi Talib, is that he said, where's the wipe of the sock? Where? He said the top of the sock, not the bottom. So you'll find that certain Muslims, due to certain ignorance, they actually wipe the what? Bottom of the sock, which is incorrect. You wipe where? The top. That's it. We also talked about details in regards to the different types of socks and what one can wear. It could be a sock. It could be the khuf. The khuf is during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Then these days at times people wear, as we know, socks. They wear socks, normal socks. And in addition to that, what is from qiyas, or what a woman can similarly do if she has a khimar on her head, she can wipe over it after she make wudu and put her khimar or the scarf over her head. She breaks wudu, of course, so she can wipe over it. We also mentioned details in regards to that. So go back to that, everyone. We have to start the class today. Then you'll find that he continues, rahimahullah. We talked about tartib. That has to be in that order. The origin is that one makes wudu in the order that we mentioned, in which Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Unless one forgets, as we talked about the details of this already. If he or she forgets, then they could go back and wash it. Could go back and wash it. And they do not have to start from the beginning. They don't have to start over. For example, you made wudu and then you left out, oh, you know what, I forgot to wash such and such. Went back, wash it, no problem. Finish their wudu and continue. We talked about that in last class. So let's keep going. With dalil al-muwala, we talked about the word muwala. Let's keep going. Then he mentions وَوَاجِبُهُ التَّسْمِيَةِ مَعَ الذِّكْرِ, the obligation of saying Bismillah before wudu. They should say it when they're in a state of what? Remembrance. Meaning, they remember, they recall it, they should what? Say it. They should say it. If they forget, is the wudu still valid? We said, what did we say? Yes. من باب إذا نسي فمن باب النسيان فما زال الوضوء إيش صحيح حتى وإن نسي فلا بأس فإن إيش وضوءه صحيح إذا نسي. If he forgets, then his wudu is still valid. It's still, whatever you want, valid. Right, let's keep going. So this is where we stopped last class. If you look at your books, everyone, let's keep going. Notice it says, وَنَوَاقِدُهُ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. We already covered these matters. Nawaqid in the Arabic language is the plural word for naqid. Noon, alif, qaf, dad. Noon, alif, qaf, dad. Naqid. Naqid. The plural is nawaqid. Nawaqid. Meaning affairs that will nullify the state of wudu. Affairs that will nullify the state of wudu. Okay, gee. So he said, Nawaqiduhu thamaniyah. What will nullify his wudu are 8, based upon what the great Imam Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdur-Razzaa, what he mentions here. He says, Nawaqiduhu thamaniyah, 8. Number 1, al-khariju an as-sabilayn or min as-sabilayn. Al-khariju min as-sabilayn. What comes out of the two pathways. We already discussed what that meant. Meaning, from the pathway of urination and the pathway of what? Defecation. Anything that comes out of those two pathways with no khilaf at all, with no difference in opinion of that at all, that will nullify one's wudu. From urination, defecation, passing wind, and we mentioned of what, for example, another example, what everyone? We talked about the different types of liquid that comes out for male and female. We talked about, for example, medi, and many. We talked about that last class. Medi, medi, or medi, you can say both. Medi and many. We talked about those type of fluids that comes out when a man, for example, is aroused sexually. It's similar to that. A woman, likewise. That if a man is to release two liquids, necessitates renewal of wudu, whereas one necessitates a complete ghusl. Medi and medi, that necessitates wudu. That's it. Those are all the fluids that comes out of a man or exits out the man with sexual arousal, except medi. Medi, not all the time comes out for sexual arousal. Certain men will have it when they just urinate, and there might be a little liquid that will come out. That's called medi. Medi, that comes out, is what they call preseminal discharge when a man is sexually aroused. When he's sexually aroused, that's called medi. Medi, if it exits, what's upon a man is to what? Make wudu, that's it. Wudu. Not ghusl. Wudu. Many is what? It's actual sperm. That's actual release of sperm. If that exits, that necessitates something, what they call what? Ghusl. Ghusl. As we mentioned that last class, we mentioned the details of this, right, everyone? The point of the matter is that all of these liquids, if they exit, then what? One has to renew their purification, or the state of purification. And depending on which one, they will have to renew their wudu. And depending on one, of course, then they will have to make a what? They will have to perform what? They have to perform a ghusl. But notice everything we mentioned that comes out of the two pathways also applies on the woman. The women likewise. Anything that comes out of the two pathways from the woman is similar. Exactly. Except that we know the women, what adds on to their condition is a monthly cycle. The monthly cycle or postnatal bleeding after she has her child. After she has her child. Usually it comes right before the child is about to be born sometimes. Sometimes it'll come right when the child is about to be born, close to when the woman is about to have her child, either days prior. Sometimes the blood starts then, depending on the condition of the woman. But the point of the matter is when she has the child and that postnatal bleeding starts, then that brings a ghusl. That's a ghusl. A woman needs to perform a ghusl for two types of blood we mentioned, which is her monthly cycle. Number two is her postnatal bleeding. She has to make what they call a ghusl. What is called, we mentioned, istihadah. Istihadah. Istihadah is something different. It's another type of blood. We talked about istihadah. That type of blood would require from a woman to perform wudu. That's it. Wudu, not a ghusl. Istihadah, a woman just performs wudu. That's it. Istihadah is when a woman thinks it's a mitzvah, but it's not. When it exceeds, usually the accurate time for a woman to determine whether or not it's a mens or a hemorrhage or blood hemorrhage, because that's usually what they call it, a nazif. نزول الدم يعني بعد الحيض في غالب الأحيان يطلق عليه الاستحاضة. والاستحاضة عبارة عن نزيف أو عرق لا علاقة لها بالحيض، ولكنه عرق أو نزيف ونزول الدم، وهو عبارة عن إيش؟ نزيف, a hemorrhage or vein that the shaitan kicked open. That's called istihada. That's not a mens. It's not a mens. Usually the woman would determine what is a mens and what's not a mens, usually by what they call al-ada, by the habitual time when it comes on. For example, when a woman's monthly cycle was normal, when it was regulated. Let's just say, usually it started, what's the day on the Gregorian calendar? December the what? 6th? December the 5th? December the 5th. This is like, let's say today is when it starts, usually. Her sister will have her mens from the 5th of December to the 10th, let's just say. Then January 5th to the 10th. February 5th to the 10th. March 5th to the 10th. Her menses here is what? It's regulated. Comes on time. She knows. All right, 5th, 10th, that's my habitual systematic time frame. Comes, as they say, comes on like clockwork, right? But let's just say something happened. A car accident. Somebody became sick. Something happened. She went to the hospital. Then all of a sudden she started knowing that her mens became irregular. So now, from the 5th to the 10th, it started exceeding that time. So exceeded, let's just say now, to the 15th. For example, she started her mens January, let's just say now December the 5th, 10th, then January was 5th to the 10th, came on like clockwork. Then let's just say something happened, car accident, something happened. Now it comes on 5th, 10th, then, or let's just say to the 9th or the 10th, it stopped, then she started spotting. Then she started spotting after that. On the 11th, to the 12th, to the 13th, 14th. That time frame, usually to determine whether or not that blood is a mens or a hemorrhage, is based upon her habitual time, which is from the 5th to when? 10th. Then she became purified. Then let's just say 2 days later, which was the 12th, she started noticing spotting there. Here in that instance, based upon what's her ada, her habitual system, she would consider that blood to be what? Istihada, not a mens. That's what they call istihada. That's a hemorrhage. So that's not a what? mince. Here she would continue to pray, and when the time came in for the salat, she would just make what? Wudu. That's it. She would make wudu. Wudu. Not a ghusl. Because it's not a what? It's not a mince. That's for the sisters. Alhamdulillah, I've covered this probably many times with the sisters in many classes. So the sisters kind of know. But that's the most accurate way. Al-Ada. You'll find the great Imam al-Albani, rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen said the same thing. That the most accurate way to determine for a woman's mense, most accurate way, even though there's another method, is what they call based upon her ada. Looking at the time when it was coming on like clockwork, where it was on time. When it was on time regularly for certain days and for each month. In addition to other signs that women can usually determine its immense. For example, she starts to get cramps. And that time frame. For example, usually women, 4th, 5th, they start to feel some type of way. Certain women have different symptoms. Sometimes they might feel weak, they might get a headache, they'll get cramps. Those are all indications that are what? That's her what? That's her mense. Those are all indications. All right, her mense came on when? The 5th. It came on the 5th. Or around the 4th, when it's about to come on, women usually know because their bodies start feeling a certain way. Like I'm starting to feel weak. I'm starting to feel tired. I'm starting to crave chocolate. I'm starting to feel a little tired. And I'm starting to have what? Cramps. Say it again. If she starts to feel annoyed and irritated. Or she's starting to change her manners or behavior. Certain things men need to know. Why did you have to say that? At any rate. So what we're saying, these are things that men need to know and memorize, if you can. Also, with your wife. When her mense comes on without asking, if you can, noticing. So you'll notice a little strange behavior of your wife today. You'll be like, you look at the date. Oh. That's it. Really? PMS, really? Premenstrual syndrome? Really? Nice. So what we were saying in this regard, everyone, that those are things that you should what? Notice to determine whether or not it's a what? Men's, sisters. So you notice PMS, post-menstrual syndrome, post-menstrual syndrome? Post or pre? No, pre is before. Post is after. Huh? It's pre. That's what I'm saying. Post is after. Pre is before. Premenstrual what? Syndrome. Those type of affairs determines clearly. Those are all signs, indications. It's a what? It's a menstrual cycle. Those are all the signs. So a woman, when she has her mense, then she what? She leaves off the salah. And she leaves off fasting. As far as sexual, she can't be intimate in that way as far as with her. I'm sure the men know what I'm talking about. Okay? But at any rate, those type of affairs, you cannot do it. So those type of instances, the person avoids his wife in that particular instance, and I think, like we said, it's understood. As they say, what's understood does not have to be what said here. But at any rate, those type of matters, that's usually the determinative factor of where a woman can now, like we said, determine whether or not it's a mense or what they call istihadah. Another method a woman can determine, the Prophet ﷺ also said in the narration, Dam al-hayd yu'raf aswad. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said to one of the Sahabiyat who came to him, and he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, to her, he said, Dam al-hayd yu'raf. He said the blood of a woman is yu'raf. So a person might say in the hadith, this is the reason why you have to study these narrations with a scholar or with someone who can teach you. It does not mean Dam al-hayd yu'raf. It doesn't mean it's known. That's not what it means. Dam al-hayd yu'raf meaning it has a araf. Araf means it has a ra'iha, has a scent. So the Messenger of Allah has given another method of the word, of a way in which a woman can use as a method to determine whether or not she has a mens or is it istihada. Another method, number 2, is the Prophet ﷺ said it has 3 characteristics from them. As a smell, it's also black and it's thick. So it has a araf, a ra'iha, a scent. Number 2, it's black. He has a blackness to it, and he said it's thick, thaqim. So that's the second method of how a woman determines whether or not it's a mens or istihada, which is called a hemorrhage or a broken vein or broken vessel. That's called istihada. So she can look at the characteristic of the blood. Does it have a smell? Is it black? Does it have blackness? Do you mean it's some form of discoloration? Blackness. Let's stick to the characteristics exactly. Odor, blackness, and it's thick. Those are the 3 characteristics of a mens usually. Those are the 3. I don't want to say discoloration. Leave that. Number 1, again, it has a smell. Number 2, has some blackness to it. Aswad. The Prophet ﷺ even mentioned it. He said aswad. It's black. And 3, it's thick. It's thick. So that's the other method that a woman can utilize to determine that it's a what? Mens. Then there's a third method, but I'll talk about that later. We're talking about other things here. Got off the topic again. But at any rate, those are the matters pertaining to a woman that if it's a mens, in order for her to perform the prayer and to make wudu, in order for her to be in a state of purification, she has to now follow the steps until what they call inqita' mujib, meaning the reason why she's in that state cuts completely, which is her mens has to come to a complete what? Exactly, to a complete stop. Her mens, what comes as a result of it, a woman has to perform a what? Ghusl. Not wudu, ghusl. A woman, when she's on her mens, she has to make a what? Complete ghusl. And similar to that, when she is finished from what? Performing what they call postnatal bleeding from after her pregnancy. After pregnancy, she has the child, they have what they call what? Postnatal bleeding. That also necessitates what? Ghusl or wudu, which one? Ghusl. Ahsant. Ghusl. Now, if she's on another type of blood, which is called istihada, a hemorrhage. A hemorrhage. In that instance, a woman has to make a wudu or ghusl, which one? Wudu. Good. You're paying attention. Wudu. Istihada's for wudu only. Wudu, not a ghusl. And we just gave a summarized method of how one can determine between whether or not it's a mens or a hemorrhage. We just gave a little keys. There's a little bit more details than that, but those are the slight little what? Usus, the little mafatih, or they call ru'us al-aqlam. الآن أعطيناكم إيش؟ رؤوس الأقلام في الموضوع وإن كان هناك تفاصيل أكثر من هذا، ولكن يعني على سبيل الاختصار أعطيناكم شيئا منها. At any rate, so we just gave you the little head notions and summarized little versions, but there's still more details in that. Pretty much. So in that instance, that is very important in regards to a woman's what? Purification for a salat. That's very important for her to know. Very important. Because a lot of sisters, and I've heard these stories. I heard there were sisters that were embracing Islam and they still were praying while they're in their mens. Yes. You'll be surprised what's out there. A sister will be out there praying, she's still in her mens. While she's still praying. Because she didn't know. Nobody taught her. She didn't know. So and sometimes she'll have a istihada. And she'll think that, now the opposite. That's the opposite. So the instance where she's on her meds, she has to leave off the prayer. In the instance of istihadah, it's the opposite. She has to still what? She has to still pray. You understand? So those are the things that are very what? Important for the sisters to know. Because now a woman doesn't know the distinction between hayd and istihadah, and she'll just automatically assume that blood that's coming out is a what? It's istihadah. So you say, oh, it's blood. I've been bleeding for 10 days, even though it's a little irregular, but for some odd reason, extended. So you know what? I'm just going to continue not to pray. But in that instance, she doesn't know that it's not, it could possibly be, she doesn't know that istihadah is there, or there's another category of blood called what? Istihadah. She doesn't know. So she just thinks all of it is what? Immense. So in those days where she does have actually istihadah, she still has to what? She still has to pray. So that's the thing. And she also has to still what? Perform wudu. And she has to know that hukum also. All she has to do is what? Make wudu and pray. For which category? Istihadah. You understand? Good. See, the brothers here and paying attention. Because some of the brothers, when they hear these affairs of women, they become disinterested. Oh, Abdur-Razzaa, that's for the sisters. That's good. I'm complimenting all the brothers in front of me. Because usually these type of ahkam, men don't have no desire to learn it. They don't. I remember I told the brothers, you have to learn this. Especially when to be a strong student of knowledge. You have to learn these affairs. I'm not interested. Okay. Then what you're going to do with your wife when she needs to know certain things. And your daughters. You understand? These matters are very, very important. Very important. So let's keep going. The great Imam, he goes on to say, Rahimahullah. How long have we been speaking? I'm sorry. Okay, good. So he said, وَنَوَاقِدُهُ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. So he said, what nullifies one's wudu is 8. What comes out of the 2 pathways. We already talked about that. Then he said, وَالْخَارِجَ الْفَاحِشُ النَّجِسُ مِنَ الْجَسَدِ. He said, what comes out, that is fahish. But we said that the word fahish here means kathir. Doesn't mean disgusting. And certain people think, it means disgusting. No, it doesn't mean disgusting here in this context. Al-fahish here means kathir. A lot. Abundant. Of what is impure from the body. We talked about these details also last class, right, everyone? We talked about the difference between a little bit of blood or a lot of blood or a bump on the face, or if you have what they call a nosebleed. All those matters we covered. So go back to those details. Even though we said that blood, even though it might be considered an instance of najis, but there's no dalil concrete in the sunnah where it necessitates that it will nullify one's wudu. Not talking about the blood of a woman for a minute. We're talking about on the body. Because you notice it says here in this context, what does it say? From the body. Not from the what? Private part. It says here from the body, like a bump on your chest, bump on your face, or you cut yourself. You cooking something, you might accidentally what? Cut yourself with your knife. Do you have to make wudu again? What did we say last class? No. No, you don't. Is it clear, everyone? Or you have a bump, and we also mentioned the details of blood, which is pus. We also talked about that too. On the body, a bump on your face, on your arm, whatever. You bust that bump, you have to make wudu again. We said, no. No, you don't. There's no dalil for it. No dalil. What's the evidence from Kitab al-Sunnah? We said that there's nothing that clearly establishes that those affairs renders you or nullifies or renders null and void your wudu. There isn't a dalil for that. We talked about that. But let's keep going. But we did mention it said as a precautionary measure, if one sees a lot of blood, I'm talking about copious amounts. A lot. Talking about blood everywhere. Blood. Even though I see the position of that doesn't make nullify the wudu, but at the same time, Shaykh Uthaymeen does mention to say if it's copious amounts, still what? Make wudu. If it's a lot, I'm talking about copious amounts, a lot. But the little bit of blood, he says that it does not nullify one's wudu. It doesn't. But for the aspect of taking precautionary measures, if you are in doubt and you think that a lot of blood that you see, I'm talking about a lot, and you want to now take a precautionary measure, then make what? Make wudu. Jay. So let's keep going. With zawal al-aql, also, when one is in a state of insanity. We talked about this last class. Zawal al-aql. We talked about that for a person, for example, is intoxicated. We talked about that, right? Or if they're in a coma. Or if they pass out for a couple of minutes. We talked about this. Or if they fall into a light sleep or a heavy sleep. We talked about that. The difference between a light sleep and the difference between a real what? Heavy one. If it's a real heavy one, then one should make wudu. If it's a deep, heavy sleep, make wudu. If it's a light sleep where you're once propped up, like what happened to the Messenger of Allah and the Sahaba, where the Messenger of Allah walked in and some of the Sahaba were waiting for him. And their heads they was propped up and their heads was falling asleep. And even some of them said they started hearing the noise of slight what? Snoring. Slight snoring. They stood up when he walked in, they stood up and prayed. They stood up and prayed along with him, and they did not perform wudu. It was a clear indication that light sleep does not break your wudu. It says in the narration, it said, فَخَفِقَتْ رُؤُوسُنَا, that our heads started taking a position where it was about to what? Like go like this, like. Some of the narration, I think it's either like this, or they was like this, like your head, you're about to go to sleep. And the Messenger of Allah walked in, and then he stood up and prayed. Right, we talked about those details. Let's keep going. Touching the woman with desire. We talked about that also. We said that touching your wife does not break your wudu. Touching your wife, kissing her on the forehead, kissing her on the cheek, or what they call the muqaddimat, the introduction towards one's desires being aroused, does not break your what? Wudu. It doesn't. It says the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we talked about when he was praying, and while he was praying, he touched Aisha while he was praying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While he was praying, and Aisha was next to him or in front of him, I think it mentions, was next to him or in front of him, and they made skin contact. The skin of Aisha touched the Messenger of Allah while he was praying. And he did not what? He continued to pray and finished it. So it's a clear narration that when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he prayed with our mother Aisha and they made skin contact and he kept praying, it's a clear indication that his purification, his wudu was still what? Valid. His wudu was still valid. Because if him touching Aisha necessitated that he had to renew it, he would have what? He would have stopped immediately in the prayer and made wudu again. Which is a clear indication what? They didn't. They kissed his, touched Aisha, they made contact, skin contact. In the narration, they touched. While he was praying, that the message that she woke up, it says in the narration, feeling around. This should make the sisters probably laugh. That when she woke up, because we know our mother Aisha loved the Messenger of Allah very deeply. So he wanted to make sure that what? He wasn't with one of his wives. She woke up, where is he? Where is she? And found that he touched the Messenger of Allah, her hand made contact. He was praying right there, right next to her. And she said the hand touched the Messenger of Allah. Right? So, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he touched her. That is a clear indication his wudu was still what? It still was valid. Even though they made what? Even though they made contact. Even though She touched him. They said Aisha touched him. And he still kept what? Praying. He still kept praying. So in that instance, whether it be desire, and we have the narrations where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu used to what? He would kiss his family and still go out to what? Still go out to pray. Kissing is a form of what? It's a form of not desire, but to a certain extent, it's a form of, if we want to say, what's the word I'm looking for? It's desirable of showing affection. It's showing and displaying some form of what? Affection here. And kiss, and he would leave. And still what? Pray without renewing his what? Exactly. So for one to now kiss his wife, even if it was with desire, the condition is that you cannot what? Release. If you release, something comes out of from the two pathways, then in that instance your wudu is what? Is invalid. If something came out from where? From the two, or from the pathway, from one pathway. Excuse me. Certain men get nervous. But at any rate, those type of instances, everyone, let's stay focused here. Stay serious. So those, if a man releases, or if a woman, similar, if she releases, then what? They have to make wudu. But just mere touching and even fondling. You might fondle with your family, with your wife, might hug her, touch her, she might touch you, things of that nature. As long as nothing what came out or exited, as long as something did not exit, then your wudu is still what? Valid. We didn't get to that yet. We're touching the private part? Oh, yeah. Now, good question. Matter of fact, that brought me to another thing. Let's just say excellent. That was excellent. Excellent detail. So let's just say your family. It's sad in the West we have to talk about these issues. Let's just say your wife might have touched you in your private area before you leave out. Behind your thobe. Ahsant. Doesn't break the wudu. If it's behind the what? It's behind the cloth or something that covered, that came in between. No, not desire, cover. Or izar. No, izar. Any form of cloth or material, whether it be a thobe, cloth, whatever. As long as it comes between it, what they call a ha'il. We talked about this last class. A ha'il. If there's a ha'il, a cover that comes in between, it's not direct contact with the skin of the private part, then the wudu is still what? It's still valid. But if the hand made contact to the private part directly, then what? It's invalid. Based upon the hadith what we talked about of Busra bint Sufyan. We talked about that in last class. That's the class we stopped at. Hadith of Busra bint Sufyan. The hadith is authentic. Also, Greek Imam al-Albani authenticated it. He said that the Messenger of Allah, "Man massak dhakarahu falyatawadda." Whoever touches their private part directly, direct contact, meaning without anything between it, then let him make wudu. So that goes for the person themselves, or if you touch what? Another person. Whether it be a person might say another person. Yes, your wife. Yes, the baby, or have you. The doctor, even though I think they're supposed to wear gloves. But all those other matters, even for janazah, same thing. That was what we was going to cover today, but we didn't get to cover it yet. We was going to talk about the affairs of the janazah for the funeral prayer. Does it break you wudu or not? That was the topic of today for janazah. But at any rate, the point of the matter is, and that's the next condition. If you look at your books, everyone, what does it say? Touching a woman with desire. What's the strongest opinion? What we said? That touching a woman with desire does not break your wudu as long as you do not what? Nothing exits. No. Don't break anything.
No, she touched you without. She touches you.
Where? Absolutely. Oh, I see what you're saying. All right, now I was kind of get it. Good question. Ahsant. Good, good. Now I understand where he's going with it. He said, if the woman makes direct contact with you without anything behind, without any cloth or what have you, touches the private part of her husband, does she have to renew wudu or both? We said she does. She does, not you. She does. Is it clear? And likewise, vice versa. If you touch her, similar to that. Okay? Good. What do we say in regards to a shahwa? I mean, excuse me. We covered that already. Oh, the next one. I'm sorry. Let's read this quickly. وَمَسُ الْفَرْجِ بِالْيَدِ, touching the private part with the hand. Touching the private part with the hand. This is what we just covered. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. وَمَسُ الْفَرْجِ بِالْيَدِ. This is what we stopped at last class. قُبُلًا كان أو دبرًا. قُبُلًا كان أو دبرًا. قُبُلًا كان أو دبرًا. Touching the private part with the hand. That's only conditioned or stipulated with what? Without a ha'il. Without a cover. Meaning something that's a cloth in between. Is it clear, everyone? Meaning if you have like some rubber glove or a cloth. Can you close that for me? That sound like your voices. Is that window open? It's closed? Okay. Whether or not if you have a rubber glove on or cloth and you touch the private part, then that does not break your wudu. If you have a rubber glove on or some type of cover, touch the private part directly, that your wudu is still what? Still valid. Now, if you touch it with the naked hand, whether it be the bottom of the hand or the top of the hand, the batin al-kaf or zahir al-kaf, batinahu or zahir al-kaf, would it be the inward part or the outward part of the hand? Directly touch the private part. Directly, then one will have to make what? One will have to make wudu. So if it's the qubul or the dubur, if it's the private part or the backside, meaning the anus itself, if you touch it, then one should what? One is upon him to make what? Wudu. To make wudu. Shaykh Abdur-Muhsin al-Abbad, hafidhullah wa ra'ah, he did mention and say that if a person touches his private part directly, male, of course, just for example, he's made ghusl. And after he finished performing ghusl, he just accidentally grazed it. Like he took a towel, and it happens. I think all the brothers know what I'm talking about. All the males listen online. All the males know what I'm talking about. Happens to all of us. You went get in the shower, you get out, you may wudu or ghusl or have you, and then you grab something and accidentally whoop, grazed. In that instance, what does the one have to do? Do they have to now? Did they intentionally or they unintentionally touched it? In which case do we say he has to make wudu? He does, or does he have to do wudu for both cases? What do we say? So in that instance, what do we say? What do you say, Yusuf? If it's good, that's what Shaykh Abdur-Muhsin al-Abbad said. You'll find it. He mentions Hafidullah. He said that if you just unintentionally just grazed it, you in the shower, you unintentionally. He said in that instance your wudu is still what? Valid. But if you intentionally touched it, then your wudu is what? Invalid. You have to make wudu over again. You have to make wudu over again. If you do it unintentionally. Excuse me. If you do it intentionally, deliberately, intentionally, deliberately. But if you did it accidentally or unintentionally, then your wudu is still what? Valid. Is it clear, everyone? Qubulan, then you find the great Imam, he says, Qubulan can or duburan. Whether it be the private part in the front or the anus in the back. If you touch it directly without any ha'il, any covering, you direct contact, you have to make what? Wudu over again. You have to make wudu over again. طيب, Aklu lahm al-jazur. That's where we stopped at last class. Now we finally start class today. Now we finally start class today. طيب, the second matter is eating lahm al-jazur. Eating the meat of what they call jazur. Jazur. Keep in mind the great Imam rahimahullah, he was from the ulama of the Hanabila, rahimahullah, which he did not have any blind fanaticism. He always put the dalil of the Kitab al-Sunnah before the madhab of Imam Ahmad, which is the madhab what they call Hanabila, rahimahullah. You'll find that from the affairs that will nullify your wudu is eating a certain type of meat. What's the name of that meat? Called jazur. Or if you want to call it lahm al-jamal. Eating camel meat. Jamal. Lahm al-jamal. Jamal. Plural is jimal. And it's the same meaning as the word ibil. Ibil, jamal, same. It's a slight difference. But at any rate, al-jamal, if you eat lahm al-ibil or lahm al-jamal, same thing, jamal or ibil. Ibil. Also, ibil means camel meat. If you eat camel meat, that will what? That will break your wudu. That was from the Mufradat al-Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. Also, if you studied fiqh, these are from the clear indications that you have to look in the evidences. Due to the fact that al-Imam Ahmad, he took this position alone in contrast to Abu Hanifa, al-Imam Shafi'i, and al-Imam Malik. And he was right. Rahimahullah. So the affair revolves all around what? The dalil of the Kitab al-Sunnah. All the time. So you'll find that what they call the Jumhur, which is the majority of the great ulama, there are certain instances where one individual, due to the fact they have the evidences with them of what the Messenger of Allah said, which the position of what he had taken was what? Correct. Despite of what the Jumhur said. This is from those examples here. That he took this position alone, and then he brought his evidence from Kitab al-Sunnah. What's that evidence? So this position here is what they call from Mufradat al-Imam Ahmad. At any rate, that's a side benefit. Don't worry about that. Trying to keep the topic simple as much as we can. Limad al-Hadith, due to the fact there's a narration, which is Sahih, upon Jabir ibn Samurah. So keep in mind, we have two narrations. We have Jabir ibn Samurah radiyallahu an, and Hadith Bara. So it's two narrations we're going to use. Hadith Jabir ibn Samurah. Now Jabir ibn Abdullah, the great Sahabi, radiyallahu an, another great Sahabi, who's who? Jabir ibn Samurah, and Hadith Bara ibn Azib, another narration. Those two narrations, you'll find that the Messenger of Allah, or rather, let's stick to the Hadith of Jabir ibn Samurah. أن رجلا سأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أتوضأ من لحوم الغنم؟ قال لا. إن شئت فتوضأ وإن شئت فلا تتوضأ أو فلا توضأ. There's a narration where a man came to the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم and he said أتوضأ من لحوم الغنم? He said, O Messenger of Allah, do I make wudu from eating the meat of a sheep, a ghanam? He said, no. He says, if you want, make wudu, and if you want, don't make wudu. Then he said, O Messenger of Allah, أتوضأ من لحوم الإبل? Do I make wudu from the meat of a camel? He said, yes. So the Messenger of Allah made it clear. He said, Na'am. He said, Na'am. So this narration is what, everyone? Authentic, which has also been extracted in Sahih Muslim and others. There's another narration, Bara, where he said the Messenger of Allah made it clear, where he said it in a command form. He said, Tawadda min luhum al-ibil. He said, make wudu from eating the meat of the camel. Make wudu from eating the meat of camel. So in two narrations, memorize them. Don't go home and leave the book on top of the shelf. Two narrations. Very simple, very short, straight to the point. So you have that in your weaponry, your arsenal of knowledge. Okay, everyone? It's not long. It's not pages to memorize. Two short hadith. With the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. So in both of these narrations, what do you find, everyone? The Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, commanded that what? One, make wudu from eating the meat of what? A camel. Good. Keep in mind, as we said, the jamhur, the majority of the ulama, meaning the ulama of the madhahib, from Imam Malik, Abu Hanifa, Imam Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, al-Qurashi, rahimahullah, they say no. That's not naqid. That doesn't nullify it. Then, what's the dalil? So keep in mind, our question all the time is, what's the what? What's the evidence in the Kitab and Sunnah? And is it authentic? That's another matter. Is it authentic, or is there some type of illah, qadiha, fi sihhatih? Is there some form of weakness that infringes upon its authenticity? That's what we have to look at. So if you go to the dalil that they use a narration upon Jabir ibn Abdullah, not Jabir ibn Samurah. This is another one. Jabir ibn Abdullah, that أن آخر الأمرين عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه ترك الوضوء مما مسته النار. ترك الوضوء مما مسته النار. You'll find it says the narration, he says that the last affair upon the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the last thing that was left off is that he left wudu from what the fire touched. What does that mean? Cooked meat. What the fire had cooked of meat. Of what the fire had touched of meat, meaning cooked it. Right? I'm going to explain, don't worry. I'm going to explain. So that now will necessitate all forms of meat. Right? Such as, whether it be cow meat, whether it be what? Meat of a sheep, meat of a, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Right? So they're saying that now all this narration necessitates that it doesn't break wudu. You understand it? You get it? You sure? Or are you tired? He doesn't understand. I'll say it again. Keep in mind the position of Imam Shafi'i and Imam Malik and all of them. I'll say it again. You don't have to make wudu from eating camel meat. That's what they're saying. That's their position. The hadith of Jabir bin Abdullah, they said, Anna akhir al-amrayn, the last of the two affairs upon the Prophet ﷺ is that he left off making wudu from what the fire touched, meaning what is cooked meat, no matter what kind of meat it was. Whether it be what? Camel, whether it be what? sheet, whether it be what, doesn't matter. So they say that the hadith is what? General for all types of what? Huh? All types of meat. You get it so far? He's tired. He's متعب. He's نعسان الآن غلب عليه التعب. أكيد غلب عليه التعب. يعني أنا أرى أن النعسان الآن غلبت على عينيك لأنك تفعل هكذا. أنا هذا هو السبب، ولأجل ذلك لا تجد القوة في الفهم الآن، ولكن إن شاء الله المرة القادمة بإذن الله جل وعلا أو بعد الدرس سنزيد الأمر فيه وضوح لك بإذن الله جل وعلا. We'll try to explain after the class is over. I'll say it one more time, and if you don't, I'm sure the brothers will explain it to you after class is over. Keep in mind again the position of Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i. Hanifa, they say eating the meat of a camel does not what? Break wudu. It does not. Does not. That's their position. They say their narration, their evidence, he said, is a hadith of Jabir also. That the last of the affair of what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was upon, meaning before he died, or the last of revelation, is what meat when it was cooked. If what the fire touched, meaning it was what? Cooked. That he left off making wudu, meaning he did not what? Meaning if he was in a state of wudu and he ate that meat that was cooked, he would not renew his wudu, no matter what type of meat it was. You get it now? Is it starting to? Good. So when he ate, let's just say, for example, based upon this hadith, it's like saying when he ate meat that was cooked, no matter what kind it was, and he was already in a state of wudu, he would not what? Renew it. After class, inshallah. طيب. This type of narration here, everyone, is what? This narration generalizes for every type of what? Meat. So this type of dalil, you would think that it is correct in regards to any type of meat. So it's general. However, Ahl Ilm has an answer to this narration. First, they say the narration is mu'al. It is mu'al, has a illah, it has a hidden weakness in it. If we have some more time, we would go to the takhrij of it. We'll go into the actual takhrij of the hadith if we have some more time. But however, let's just say على فرض صحته فإن هذا الحديث العام مخصص بخبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في تجديد الوضوء من أكل لحم الإبل. So you'll find that Ahl Ilm that they say, and let's just say if it is authentic, then the general narration or the general hukum has been what? Restricted or specialized or specified by the narrations that made the exception, which is eating the meat of what? A camel, where you have to now make wudu. So that general hadith, let's just say if it is authentic, that we just mentioned, has been mukhassas, has now been restricted or specified by a specific ruling, which comes in those other narrations, which are authentic. Which is that the Messenger of Allah generalized meat, but then he what? Gave the exception for one type, which is camel meat. That's just to give you the summary. So Al-Imam Ahmed, in this position that he gave, rahimahullah, he was what? He was right. And that was from the Mufradat al-Imam Ahmed, which is in fiqh, is beautiful. You see how knowledge is beautiful? You could do this all day if we had to. We love it. Knowledge is beautiful. It's like a high, it's a halal high of knowledge, right? That's where you find your halal feeling. Your halal feeling of being in your own world. Yes. So ilm is light, brings life. Yes. So at any rate, That is a type of affair of what Imam Ahmed is from his mufradat. In his position in which he was what? He went outside the opinion of who? The Jumhur, the majority. He was what? In this case, he was what? He was correct. So now in all cases, you'll find the Jumhur in all cases is always what? The majority, as they say, Jumhur means, Jumhur in the Arabic language means majority. Now in all cases, you'll find that it's always what? Correct. So the affair revolves around what, everyone? The evidence. The dalil. Good. That's 1 hour and 20 minutes? Wow, it seems like it's 1 hour and 20 minutes already. Last thing before we leave off. The great Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, the great Imam, who explained Sahih Muslim. And what was Imam? Now keep in mind, this is to show how the ulama were not fanatics of their madhab. They weren't fanatic, blind fanatics. They followed the what? The evidences in Kitab and Sunnah. And we know the Imam Nawawi, what was he? Shafi'i. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, Shafi'i. Right, everyone? He was from the Imam, from the great scholars of Shafi'iyya, of the madhab of the Imam Shafi'i. And despite of that, he even said this. So notice he went against the opinion of who? Of Imam Shafi'i. He went against it. He said, as far as in the hadith of the affair of making wudu from eating camel meat, this is what he said. Now listen closely. قال في صحيح مسلم لماذا ذكر هذا الحديث وقال ذكر في هذا الباب حديثان. First, let me go back. وقال وهذا مذهب الإمام أحمد. He said that renewing one's wudu from when they eat camel meat is the madhab al-Imam Ahmed. So keep in mind, the Imam Nawawi is what? Shafi'i. He's mentioning here who? Al-Imam Ahmed, right? وقال أحمد بن حنبل, that he said that Ahmad ibn Hanbal Shaybani rahimahullah said that person has to renew their wudu from eating camel meat. Then Imam Nawawi said this affair has in it two narrations. Hadith Jabir ibn Samurah and Hadith Bara. He said about what Imam Ahmed took as a position, he said that this is the strongest position of what agrees with the evidence. He said, هذا أقوى دليل. That those two narrations that are authentic in Sahih Muslim are the strongest evidence that shows the position of Imam Ahmed was what? Correct. Which is to let you know that these great scholars didn't have no type of what? Fanaticism for their madhab. They didn't blind follow. Or blind fanaticism. Or just saying, khalas, that went against my madhab, I'm not listening. No. Because we know the Imam Nawawi is from those who explain what? Sahih Muslim. Yes, he did. He explained it. Rahimahullah. And he mentioned that this affair pertaining to renewing one's wudu from eating camel meat is what is correct. Now listen to what Imam Nawawi says in the last part of the statement. قال النووي وهو مذهب أقوى دليل. He said that is the strongest position with the strongest what? Evidences that aid it. What was the position of Imam Ahmed? Now listen to what he says at the last part. وَإِنْ كَانَ الْجُمْهُورَ عَلَى خِلَافِهِ. Even though majority are what? Upon the opinion in contrast to that. So he even agreed with Imam Ahmed, even though the majority were upon something else. He could have easily just said, I'm Shafi'i, khalas. The majority said, we won't listen to Imam Ahmed. The majority said this. Which is to let you know that the majority sometimes are not always what? Exactly. You understand? طيب وهذا يدل على أنه اختار أقوى دليل. This is an indication he chose the strongest of evidence. And that, rahimahullah, he was free from blind fanaticism and blind following. He was free from it, rahimahullah. Another masala before we close out. This is nice. I have to mention this. What about eating the other parts of the camel meat? The other parts. Like, for example, liver, fat, the fat from the meat. The things that are consumed on a normal basis from he's different. It's valid. Yeah, but you don't normally eat it. You only consume urine for a type of sickness. You just normally, we're going to have dinner tonight. Hey, what's on the. Think! Consumption of food. You would normally eat, not for an exception for an ailment in the body, for sickness. I have to give that type of clarification. Tell you. So, when you want to eat liver, the fat of a camel, all those type of matters. Camel meat, then what's normally consumed in conjunction with that is what? Let's just say the saturated fat of it, or what? The liver and the other parts. Right? Does that break your wudu or not? So keep in mind the hukum we just extracted is what? The camel meat breaks what? Wudu. Right? What about the tawabi'? The other things that follow behind it, such as liver, saturated fat of the camel meat, the liver, the organs, the heart, whatever. What do you say, Uwais? He said no. What do you say, Yusuf? He said yes. Why? Okay. Are you sure? You have something interior going on you want to give? He's different. Tayyib, anything else? In a good way. What do you say, Unib? Yes or no? Astaghfirullah. Ahmed. Abdur-Shakur. What do you say? So we have the Jamhur. The majority say, he said yes. That is correct. Why? Even the opposite. Let's just say this. We know eating pig meat is haram, right? We can't make it. See, now you get it. Can we make an exception to say, all right, we can eat the meat of the pig, but you can't eat the what? The fat part. The fat part's halal. Or the liver, what? It's halal. No, we said the whole what? The whole pig, what? It's haram. Along with the organs, along with the saturated fat, along with everything. Like, you can't consume what? The pig meat. Not just the meat, but also what they call the tawabi', what follows behind it also, from other things that could be consumed, without the exception of medicine or what that's talking about, stomach ailments. We're talking about what is consumed normally in food, what people enjoy on the plate. You understand? I don't think they enjoy camel urine on the plate. That's only for exceptions or exceptionary measures when people have stomach ailments. But in regards to that, that is also what? Haram. For the what? Pig. So that means that what? That the camel meat that falls behind it, such as liver, such as the saturated fat of it, also nullifies the what? The wudu. Can you guys valid questions, but can we get to it, please? Can we get off this, please? Can we get off this topic first? Can we get off this topic first? Good. So stay with me here. So the first thing before we move on to that, as far as the milk and those other things, so the liver and all of that, does it break the wudu? The liver of a camel meat. Does it? Does it or not? What did you say? Good. Two things, and this is for next class. Does the milk nullify it, or does the sauce nullify it? The actual sauce, the maraq. The maraq is like what you dip in bread. What do you call it? He's different. What do you dip in? What comes out of the meat? The gravy. The gravy, the sauce that comes out of the meat. The maraq. What do you dip bread in when you're making it? It's a sauce that comes from out. He's different today. So, In that instance, maraq, the sauce, all of it. We'll talk about that next class. In addition to what? The milk. We'll speak about that also what? Next class. But just to give you guys a glimpse of what we'll take next class, the milk does not break the wudu. The milk of the camel. The milk of the camel does not break the wudu. The milk. As far as the maraq, we'll talk about that next class. That has some mahalu khilaf in it. That we'll talk about next class, inshallah. ChatGPT, the word maraq. Mim, ra, qaf. Mim, ra, qaf. That you can chat GPT. That's it. Other than that, don't use it. Is it clear? It's called maraq. It's like a sauce that comes from the meat. People know exactly what I'm speaking about. When you're cooking it, there's a type of sauce that comes out of the meat that people use. They put bread in it. It's called tharid. Or they call it maraq. But you could also call it tharid. Tharid. Tha, ra, ya, dal. Tharid. Or you could call it maraq. Mim, ra, qaf. Maraq. It comes out. It's a sauce that's used and people dip bread in it. What is that? It's a certain word for it. I just can't remember right now. Gravy. Hot liquor? No. You focus. Focus on ChatGPT. Mim, ra, qaf. Maraq. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Because we got to stop. Fadl, Yusuf. Broth. That's the word I'm looking for. Broth. Maraq is broth. B-R-O-T-H. B-R-O-T-H. Broth. How you say broth in Arabic? What? Maraq. The broth. Do they call it fat sauce? No. They call it broth. Broth. So that's what they're talking about. Does the broth nullify your wudu? Does it or not? That's for next class. We'll talk about it, inshallah. Right. Mentioning Bismillah in the bathroom, it should not be done. It should not. At all. But from the aspect of darura, if there's no other place you could do it other than the bathroom, from the aspect of it being a darura, from being an extreme necessity, there's no other way you could do it. Then you do it that way. Unless you have another room you can do it in. What else are you going to do it in? No, it's not a sin. We don't say it's a sin. That we can't say. One should say the basmalah before wudu. I just said it. From the aspect of darura, say it. Even though the origin is you should not say it in the places where it's dirty or the places where those type of affairs take place in the bathroom, but it's the only place in the house you can do it. From the aspect of darura, one says it. From the aspect of darura, not because it's permissible. Oh boy. Huh? Say it one more time. He's on the road today. He's on the road. You are on the road today. I love it. You say "A'udhu billahi min al-khubthi wal khaba'ith" before you enter the bathroom with your left foot. Is that clear? Then you say it. No, you don't include it in the intention for wudu and join both. You don't do that. You come and stop. You're making me laugh. You making me laugh too. Stop. So before you enter the bathroom, you say "A'udhu billahi min al-khubthi wal khaba'ith." Bismillah. A'udhu billahi min al-khubthi wal khaba'ith. Enter the bathroom with your what? Left foot. No problem. If you're in the bathroom now, you should not say the basmalah at all. But from the aspect of darura, there's no other way you could do it, then do it. Because there's no other way you're going to make wudu in your house. You're going to put your feet in the kitchen sink, which your wife more than likely is going to smack in your head if you do that. So you don't do it. Unless you're doing it in the kitchen where food is, which I think a lot of your families would not like that. So if there's a room that you have somewhere where you can make wudu, so you can say the basmalah, then fine. Be my guest. But in that case, certain people are in situations they don't have no other place to make wudu in. So they usually make it where? The bathroom. So in the aspect of a darura, extreme, then what? Say it, not from the aspect of it being permissible, but the aspect because that is the only way you can make wudu in that instance. You guys are complicating things and making it more bigger than what it is. Is it clear? But the origin is you shouldn't say it. You shouldn't say it in the bathroom, but from the aspect of darura, say it. If you have no other way. If there's another way to do it, then do it. Okay, everyone? No. It shouldn't be mentioned in those places where defecation, urine, all those other places take place. But in that instance, because, like we said, or you might have certain people have big bathrooms where it's partitioned or whatever. In that instance, you can say Bismillah. Like the public bathrooms are they are partitioned in certain instances. That's another aspect of a darura. What you gonna do? Like for example, you're gonna make wudu. You're in the airport. You want to make wudu? What are you going to do? Alhamdulillah, certain bathrooms are big enough they're partitioned. You'll find there's a partition in between it, so you're good. Certain bathrooms, they're all what? Connected. What are you going to do? You have to pray. You understand? What are you going to do? Just fear Allah to the best of your ability? That's the place where you can perform that wudu in that instance. Unless you want to do it in the back of your car with a bottle. In that instance, that's not that. Hey, I gave you another suggestion. But if you want to do it other than that, the only way you're going to do it is what? The way for where? In the bathroom. Other than that, you got to fear Allah to the best of your ability and do what you have to do. Anything else? Is it? You trying to think of another way that's feasible? Any questions about the lesson? As far as camel urine, the origin is camel urine is not to be consumed unless in the halat of a sickness. The message of Allah allowed you to drink it only when the time a person is what? Sick. He has a stomach ailment or he has some type of sickness. Yes. But that's not something you would normally what? It's not something you would normally consume. You understand? Nobody's going to get up in the morning and have camel urine stored in their refrigerator. It's not going to do that. I don't think anybody's going to do that. And if you do that, I think your family definitely would think you're very strange. Anything else? I hope it doesn't reach the level of a khula. At any rate, anything else? About the class, anyone? طيب, we'll stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد